Again, thanks for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Castinson with Build Exact, and I am incredibly honored to present our very esteemed guest, Grant Farnsworth, who's the
Let's dial this
president.
back, Jennifer. Let's dial this back a little bit. Set the bar low here.
Who's the president of the Farnsworth Group. We have been tracking with the Farnsworth Group for forever. Watching what he presents on industry research, specifically on building products and remodeling in the housing industry overall. So Grant is going to join us today to share some of his industry knowledge and insight to help you formulate a strategy to move into 2023. There's a lot of different changes in the marketplace right now, so it'll be exciting to hear what he has to say. A couple things that I just want to make sure that I mention is that the Farnsworth Group does provide research services, and we've actually partnered with them on some research before. And I'm going to enter their website in the chat here. And then also partners with the Home Improvement Research Institute, which provides, Farnsworth works with them on a monthly homeowner tracker and a monthly pro tracker, things that you guys want to be watching, looking at. I'm going to provide that link in the chat as well. But what we should start off in the chat is that Grant is also a drummer. So put in the chat, please enter in your favorite drum solo to kick him off. So
yeah,
over to you, Grant.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's good to be with you, Jennifer, and everyone that's attending. Thank you for making time. I know we've got a lot of webinars and we're all wrapping up the year, a lot of meetings, and there's still some travel going on. I was out in Ohio, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh this week myself. So I really do appreciate you taking some time to connect with us today. As Jennifer mentioned, the Farnsworth Group is a custom research firm focused on the building products and home improvement market. This is where we have lived and breathed for over 30 years. Our job is to provide our clients, both manufacturers and suppliers, with a greater detailed insight of their brand, their product, and their specific customer, as well as their specific market. So there's a lot of great secondary kind of high-level information that's out there. We're going to look at some certainly today. If you have questions, we can help you get a much more detailed view, a deeper dive of your customer's product or brand. Please reach out. We'd love to help. We're always here as a sounding board as well when we can be. Jennifer also mentioned an organization that we partner with and manage called the Home Improvement Research Institute. Would encourage you all to check out HIRI.org. HIRI is the best source of secondary home improvement information. So if you and your organization want to stay up to speed on the fundamentals of the home improvement industry, definitely look at this organization, HIRI.org. Again, best secondary source of information. The Farnsworth Group is the best primary research organization out there. Between both of us, we should have you covered. So today we're going to look at some trends that may be driving us towards some predictions for 2023. I think the session was titled kind of the top 6 things to be looking for. So we're going to touch today on some demand. There's number 1. Number 2, we're going to look at desire, intent. Number 3, we're going to talk about supply. Number 4, we're going to talk about pricing. Number 5, availability, and number 6, we're going to talk about labor. All of these things are still ebbing and flowing as we think about the market, both from a pro perspective as well as from a homeowner perspective. So we'll look at those and how they're going to impact your business, and we'll summarize everything today with those 6 things and ultimately what it means to you. We are happy to review this one-on-one with your teams. If you have questions, please reach out to myself or anyone at the Farnsworth Group. You can visit thefarnsworthgroup.com. Submit your questions as we go through this today, because I'm going to plow through a bunch of stuff and skip over some slides. So interrupt, ask questions. I know, Jennifer, you're going to be chiming in as well with some questions that you may have on your end. All right. So with the sales pitch out of the way, let's get going looking at some fundamentals. So at the Farnsworth Group, because we are so focused on this industry, we are regularly tracking a number of factors that are impacting where we are today and where we may be headed. We look at various supply, demand, fundamentals, and then ultimately, what some of the forecasts look like. This is all free information for you all. It comes from Census. It may come from the National Association of Realtors, various organizations through our industry. So make sure that you're looking, maybe not at all of these, but at least a handful that are germane to your business. Because I think, again, it's going to give you a real good sense of what's going on today and where we may be headed tomorrow. I'm going to touch on a few of these today because I mentioned on the demand side, that's going to be one of the 6 things that are important to be paying attention to. Then we'll get into the intent and supply side of things before we look at some of the forecasts. Okay. So on the supply side, we can certainly talk about labor participation. We hope it's going to be getting better. This is a challenge not just for our industry, but for all industries. Really, the solution here is twofold, to be quite honest. It's the number of warm bodies coming into this space. We just need more people. And again, we're not the only industry that's saying that. We can certainly try to change the narrative, and we can certainly try to change the minds of people trying to be in this industry, but that's a long play. We need to affect them at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old for them to have interest in construction. So this is really about increasing the pool of candidates that are out there maybe looking for good paying jobs. The second way to help on this labor front is innovation. That's more on the manufacturing side, but it can be also on the installation side. Products that are quicker, easier to install, require less labor, have fewer callbacks, last longer, so we don't have to be back on the job site every 2 years, but we can go back every 5 or 10. So there are some solutions to this, but I will say that based on the data we're looking at, the population we're looking at, this is not going away anytime soon. Be prepared to address labor, certainly next year, but likely for many, many more years to come. Unemployment, I'm going to skip over a little bit of that. Material prices. So, this is stuff, as you look at the PPI, you can track what's going up and down. Lumber's been coming down as of late. We're seeing that help on the new home builder side of things, help protect their margins a little bit. This material pricing piece, as I'm going to talk about the homeowners here later today, is becoming more important and having budget implications on what's getting done, what brands are getting used, what products are getting used, both by homeowners as well as professionals. And I think we all need to be sensitive to the pressures that the homeowners may be putting on us to come up with more affordable solutions to projects that they want to get done. The intent is going to remain high, but what are the trade-offs that we need to be thinking about? We'll look at housing starts as well. So on the supply side of things, that there's still a need for new homes, but a slowdown has occurred this year, and we're going to see a decline next year as well in new housing starts. Permits are off over 20% year over year. When we think about new housing permits, that's the leading indicator you want to look at, not just starts, but where's the permit activity? And it's way down. So we know 2023 is going to be off when we think primarily of single family housing starts. We'll see some strength in multifamily, and we'll see some strength in commercial as well. But this starts getting after the nuances of where there may be opportunity and where there's going to be greater headwinds. One of the other things that we mentioned, so number 3 on the list was supply. We talk about demand, we've hit that, and we talk about desire. We'll be touching on that. We're also going to be talking about supply. So as we look at months of inventory, and this means if we were to stop putting homes on the market today, how many months would it take for us to clear out of the homes that are for sale? For new homes, it would take us, as of September, about 9 months to clear out of that inventory. For existing homes, it's a little over 3 months. A healthy market says 6 months, and this is national, so it's going to differ by market, right? But healthy markets would be 6 months of inventory. We are well below that on the existing home side, which is the bulk of homes in this country. Because of that low supply, it's going to do 2 things. One, it's going to keep people in their homes a little bit longer because they need to have fewer options to move into. And 2, it's going to keep home prices very high. Home price appreciation is important in our industry because it's oftentimes a source, or can be a source, for funding larger project renovation. Okay. Even if we have a 5 or 10% decline in home prices, we've gone up 30 to 40% over the last 2 to 3 years. So y'all, even if we come back 10%, we've still got a mad amount of equity in our homes because of the growth we've seen since March of 2020.
Grant, I don't know if you see the question just popped up. Why the variance in trend of the supply of existing versus new?
Yeah, so some of that is price points. Some of that is just homes coming on the market and true kind of volume and number of homes that are out there. we'll look at that price piece. So you can see the blue line here. This is speaking to that question, Jennifer, that this blue bar is the average median home price for new, and the orange is median home price for existing. So because of the material costs, because of the labor costs, because of the land costs, and the regulation costs that are creeping up, depending on what state you're in, the cost to build a new home is pretty darn expensive. That's getting passed on to the homeowner. So the cost of a new home relative to the cost of an existing home of the same kind of, make and model is a pretty sizable gap. When we have that gap, it puts pressure on new homes because people are going to the existing home market to get a home that they can better afford. Hence, you've got this picture of more inventory on new homes because of their price point. Also, you're seeing now over 25% of home builders offering incentives, rebates, buying down points to help move that inventory. This is also a catalyst for some of the confidence we're going to look at here in a minute for new home builders. 10-month consecutive declines in their confidence. And a lot of it is because this inventory has grown. It's gotten expensive, and homeowners have retracted from buying right now. Versus, again, existing home price, which is still high and still elevating, but lower than a home that would be its equivalent, kind of size, et cetera. Okay. And this picture here, so this is still on the supply side of things, is going to be a really big catalyst to that, that equity picture that's going to fund some project activity for the next few years. Okay. And because we've got such low supply, I'm bouncing back and forth, because we've got such low supply, particularly on the existing side, those home prices are going to hold pretty strong. In some markets, we're going to see a depreciation much quicker and much greater, like in Boise, right? This is kind of the poster child for COVID, home expansion and things like that. Boise went up really, really high, really, really fast. Yeah, they're going to drop quite a bit more than, Indianapolis, Indiana, right? But nationally, we're going to remain pretty strong on the equity front because of the low supply environment that we're in. So let's go on to some of the other things on our list. Let's talk about the demand side of things. I talked about home sales just real quickly. We've been seeing steady declines. The home sale figures are down a significant percentage year over year. As we look at homeownership rates, this is an encouraging thing. This is kind of a base of demand. We are seeing homeownership rates hit traditional levels, maybe a little bit higher. They were declining well before the pandemic, and much of this was because of the delayed stage of life for young would-be homebuyers, i.e. millennials. They were not buying at 25 years old. They were buying at 35 years old, 40 years old, and we are now seeing that. Millennials are now up to the age of 41, 42 years old. They are coupling. They may be having kids. They are starting to move to the suburbs. So that delayed behavior is reflected in the home ownership rates. No more are we saying or believing that the world has changed and that millennials don't want to become homeowners. That has been debunked. And this is a good thing because this is the fundamental to the demand of home ownership, which is important in our industry. Similarly, household growth, household formation continues to go up. This is where we see a big difference where we were in the Great Recession, where we had a very low demand with really, really high supply. We've got really, really low supply right now with really, really high demand. So this all bodes well for our industry. The challenge here is we've got a lot of homeowners that have been kicked to the sidelines due to some affordability issues. We have reduced our affordability by about 35% in the recent year. The affordability metric is comprised of savings rates, interest rates, credit scores, kind of all these factors, and it is effectively a metric that says it's the average person able to afford the average priced home. And we have certainly seen this metric decline pretty rapidly over the last few months, mainly due to mortgage rates going up and also due to incomes not keeping pace with inflation. Okay, this doesn't mean that people can't afford a home. It just means that at current price levels, there's going to be some pressure amongst a segment of the population that are more challenged to get into that home. Okay, Let's look at consumer confidence right quick, and then we'll get into some forecasts. So there is the financial perspective on what's impacting demand, but there's also the psychological. And I don't think we hear a lot about this because it's such great clickbait to talk about affordability and rates are going up and no one can afford this and no one can afford that. Not always the case. A lot of it is also by choice. There is quite frequently, the Farnsworth Group has been doing this for 30 plus years, and we've seen knee-jerk reactions. We've seen retractions in the market time and time again. A lot of times, as it relates to rates going up, where the homeowner says, I'm just gonna hold off for now. I'm not sure what's going on. There's some uncertainty in the market. I'm going to wait until there's some calmness in the waters and things normalize before I make a move. So this consumer confidence is an important headspace we need to pay attention to that is putting some demand on the sideline.
Hey, Grant, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So this is for home buying, but what about all the equity buyers have in their homes? And do they have higher confidence in starting a remodeling project or something along those lines?
Yeah, so when we look at the intent, and that was one of our top 6, is the desire. There's demand, but there's also that intent. The intent remains really, really strong, Jennifer. So in a lot of the data we look at, we see 80% plus of homeowners wanting to start a home improvement project in the near future. They want to do the work. They likely have savings or equity they can tap in to do it. However, what we're seeing is they're going to start making trade-offs. And we're seeing that in particularly the homeowner research that we're doing. And we're starting to see that in the contractor work that we're doing because they're wrapping up projects they may have sold 6, 9, 12 months ago. So that equity is going to be a piece that they may rely on to help fund particularly larger projects, but they may not borrow $100,000 like they had planned last year. Maybe now they're only going to borrow $80,000. So you as the contractor, you as the supplier need to help me make some compromises, either in material or brand, et cetera, to still get that kitchen done, but at $20,000 less. That equity is an important piece. Okay. It also brings them comfort too, that even if they are paying cash, they know that they've got value in their home. So God forbid something happen, they can sell it and move. Again, complete opposite of where we were in the Great Recession, where people were underwater. They had negative equity in their home. They couldn't leave. That is a big factor in why people weren't investing in their home 15 years ago. Why am I going to put another 50 grand into this house when I'm already underwater 200,000? So equity also serves as a really nice blanket of comfort that if I spend cash and spend money on my home, I'm still going to be okay to sell it if I need to, because it's worth much more than what I'm putting into it.
Sure. Thank you.
Cool. Let's talk about contractor confidence as well. So this is a study that we do. This is the Farnsworth Contractor Index, comes out once a quarter. Again, this is all free information that you can get at any time. This is looking at existing home contractors. We look at remodelers, exterior trades, mechanical, which is HVAC, electricians, plumbers. We look at finish contractors such as painters and carpenters, and we look at landscape, so kind of outside of the house. Across the board, what we've seen certainly over the last several quarters is this a return to confidence and continued expectations that they're going to be able to acquire business needed over the next 6 and 12 months. They have backlogs that have remained pretty steady. Some are seasonal. We've seen a decline in backlog for landscapers and exterior trades, but by and large, the confidence remains on the existing home contractor side of the world. Where it doesn't exist is on the builder side. 10-month straight declines on builder confidence from the NHB measure that they produce. So builders are starting to feel pretty darn bad about the market. Not as bad as the Great Recession. You could see that's when they were kind of curled up in fetal position. But that measure of 50 says, I'm not positive, I'm not negative. We're now down kind of this into the 30s. So I'm feeling a little bit pessimistic here about the next 12 months of business. And rightfully so. They've got a lot of headwinds to try to build affordable homes. Again, we talked about labor, lumber, land. Okay. So what does this all mean? We talked about some of the supply, some of the demand. Those are some of our of the top 6 that they were in there. Let's look at forecasts. From a revenue perspective on the consumer side of things, this is from the Home Improvement Research Institute. So again, encourage you to become a member. It's very, very affordable and provides some great market sizing and forecasting numbers across a variety of high-level categories. On the consumer side, just looking at product sales, they're anticipating a 0.6% growth for next year, which is relatively flat. A lot of the DIY work, a lot of the DIY capabilities have been done over the past 2 to 3 years. They've kind of exhausted their skill set. right? And found all the fun little things that they wanted to do. Not necessarily pull forward, because we created a lot of projects out of the pandemic that otherwise wouldn't have happened. But you're going to start seeing kind of a leveling off of that activity. Keep in mind, this is coming off the heels of some pretty dynamic growth the 2 prior years. So to be flat off of years of 14% and 6% growth, I think most of us would take it. Okay. On the pro side of the world, this is where we see some opportunity. We talked about existing homes, and we talked about the lack of supply and therefore the lack of mobility. There's also another thing keeping homeowners in their home, and that's the change in rates. Those that do have a mortgage, which is around 60% of owner-occupied homes, actually have a mortgage payment. The other 40%-ish do not have a mortgage payment. Pay attention to that. But for those that do, they're not willing to leave this 2.5%, 3.5% mortgage for what is now a 6.5%, 7% mortgage. They're going to stay put. It's just not worth the cost to go take on a new mortgage at twice the rate. So this is where we see some upside in that existing home space and projects being done by the contractors more so than DIY. The Home Improvement Research Institute for 23 expects about a 3 to 4% growth in the contractor product sales for next year. So there is opportunity, and this is more reflective of pre-pandemic, where you typically see kind of a 3 to 5% annualized growth rates, with the exception of what happened in 2021 and 22, which were outliers. As far as housing starts, this is where we're not looking great, and this is getting revised almost on a daily basis. But it looks like this year will be down double-digit percentage-wise year over year. Forecasts for 23 are pretty similar, down double-digit for single-family housing starts. Multifamily looks to hold pretty solid. So this is really about the single-family loss of homes as we get into the end of 2022 and throughout 2023. Okay. So with that, let's do a quick time check. We're going to talk about some customer behaviors, first looking at some pros and what the pros are thinking, doing, feeling. I know there's some builders on the line. I know there's some dealers on the line. So this is maybe more for the dealers to understand what your pro audience is thinking and how you need to be reacting to the current conditions. Okay. I do want to mention our partners in some of this research. Venveo is a great digital agency focused on the building space. This was some work we've done collectively with them that we just finished up in October. Thousands of respondents, both pro and DIY. We're going to touch on some of it today.
Grant, did you see the question in the chat? Any variance in the second home market versus single family market?
Yes, second home market saw a real big boom during COVID, the height of COVID. I guess we're still technically in the pandemic. I don't know anymore. But certainly in the height of the pandemic, a lot of second home activity was happening. I think that's going to cool dramatically. People were leveraging some low rates, almost free money against some pretty valuable assets. Those assets may have declined, whether that was stock valuation, whether that was home valuation, and those rates have doubled. So I think you're going to find the second home market extremely soft compared to where we were last year and the year before. If you're relying on the second home market, I would be extremely nervous. Also, if you're relying on the luxury market, we're starting to maybe see some softening there as well. Again, being impacted by the funding source, maybe for some of those high-end luxury projects. Does that make sense? I'm assuming people are nodding heads.
Yeah, I'll let Jay respond in the chat, but that made sense to me. Thank you.
All right. So let's look at some builder GC remodeler stuff that we talked about, and when these are everyone from kind of small residential to getting into commercial space. But we asked, are you seeing availability issues? And availability is still a concern. What I would say is the smaller, more residential the trade, the less availability is a concern for them. The larger, more commercial oriented, the greater availability becomes a concern. What's most important is I want to force you to the right hand side of this. What happens when availability was an issue? You'll see that roughly 5%, whether it was in 2001 or this year, only around 5% didn't do anything. The other 95%, they found a solution. Maybe it was another supplier. Maybe it was another brand. Maybe it was a trade-off on price point. the idea here is they're not going to wait around for you if you're a manufacturer or supplier. They're going to find a solution. We know building material costs are up. Project availability is getting more and more, I guess contractors are becoming more and more available, I should say, when we look at 21 versus 22. So we start seeing, depending on the trade, a little bit of a relief on availability, a little bit more openness to projects that they're starting to wrap things up. Okay, so be thinking about, what trades you're talking about, what projects they serve, because there may be some variance in their sensitivities to availability, costs, as well as how open they are to taking on new projects. Okay. Something we track on a monthly basis is this simple question: what are your 3 biggest business challenges today? And I want to call out that number 1 right now is material pricing. This is amongst hundreds of contractors we survey every single month. Availability is not going away. We are starting to see it soften in certain categories. Price is the new availability for 2023.
So I think that's a critical point, Grant. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that in terms of our audience here, just one of the things you shared with me recently was that substitutions are changing. If you would talk to that just a little bit, I think that's super important for dealers to understand, and then also for builders to be thinking about.
Yeah. There's a couple of metrics that we look at on a regular basis. One is the percentage that have tried a new brand within the last year. And we look at that across about 22 different categories. And depending on the category, it's anywhere from 15% to 30% of pros have tried a new brand in the past year, deviating from their normal brand. The 2 causes of that continue to be availability, but creeping up on that list of causes is price, finding something that's a better price point. It's not saying it has to be the cheapest, but more competitive, looking for that pricing option. The other thing that we look at and we track on a monthly basis is how are pricing challenges impacting your purchase decisions. We see around 30% of pros saying they've either purchased a lower priced product, different brand, or they've purchased less than they have planned. So almost for a third of the pros that we survey on a monthly basis now for the last couple of months are saying, yeah, I'm most certainly making some trade-offs, buying cheaper, buying less. So these are very real implications that we're starting to see in the data. We get it in qualitative work we do for our manufacturers and suppliers, and it's maybe starting from the homeowner conversation. So keep that in mind, right? This is a contractor response to a homeowner requirement. Okay, so price. We're going to hit on that at the very end. Think about your merchandising if you're on the supply side. Think about product development if you're on the manufacturing side. What can you de-engineer to deliver what's needed versus what's wanted? What does the good, better, best mix look like as a supplier, as a manufacturer? Make sure that you have some options going forward that are true price strategies, as opposed to where you've been maybe just putting out fires for the last 2.5 years of availability. Okay. Want to share a little bit about how folks are getting some information, particularly on the pro side. So we look at both online and in-store activity, and the bottom vertical, or the bottom horizontal line is number of online searches before they make a building product purchase. The vertical is number of in-store searches before they make a home improvement purchase or building product purchase, and these are pros. So I want to call out that, first of all, you're seeing research being done across really any product category. The more expensive, more durable, the more research being done. More commodity oriented, lower price point, more consumable, less research being done. But almost across the board, when research is being done, it's kind of this equal in-store physical research with online digital research. This digital world is not going away, y'all. So the importance to be able to marry your digital and physical is critical. If they go in store, it may likely be after they've already made a decision online, and that in store is just really validation of what they've learned online before they've gone in. Okay. And no one's journey is the same. They're going to be bouncing back and forth between physical and digital, and maybe they're going to be on their phone looking at a digital search while they're in your store. So be hypersensitive to the fact that like digital and physical have to be combined more now than they ever have been. Digital is only going to keep growing. It's not going backwards. Okay. Why are they going online? They're looking at price. They're looking for, again, not the cheapest, but they're trying to get some pricing information. I know manufacturers sometimes have a challenge sharing price, but get creative with it. You can show dollar signs to help show it's in this price range or that price range, or we've got 3 tier of price points and this one falls in the high tier, this one's in the mid price tier. Okay. Availability is number 2. And this is usually in the middle of the pack, kind of pre-pandemic when we do tracking. So again, how are we helping customers understand our price ranges? How are we sharing and showing availability? And then, of course, product information, product reviews. Those are always important. Reviews getting more and more important with pros. Okay, I'm going to keep jumping through this pretty quick. Social has become more and more of a useful tool with the pros as well. YouTube isn't just a DIY tool anymore. We may not like it, but the reality is that pros are looking to YouTube for some instructional video and product content. A lot of manufacturers are doing a great job with some very short, poignant videos directed at the pro. These are useful tools now in the pro market, not just the consumer homeowner market. Okay, and then I'm going to finally wrap up on the contractor side with the brand use stuff. Jennifer, we talked about this a minute ago. This is the percentage of folks that have tried a new brand of product within these categories in the past year. And again, you'll see it's jumping around anywhere from 13% in 2022 up to 22%. Less brand movement than we saw last year, and that's because some of these availability challenges are starting to resolve themselves to a certain degree. Okay. Also, demand is slowing down slightly this year as well. So those two things are helping reduce the amount of shift that we were seeing in 2020 and 2021. Okay. Most important, when they are trying a new brand, do they think it's a good brand? Is it performing as well or better or worse than their prior brands? And what we see unequivocally is that these new brands that they're trying, if they are trying a new brand, is meeting their satisfaction criteria. It's performing as well, if not better, than the brand I used before, and over 70% intend to continue to use that brand.
Grant, another question here. How important is e-commerce for the lumber hardware dealer? And just tagging on to that, because that's the question in the chat, but I'm really curious as to, you said ordered online for delivery. So how much is delivery factoring into these things?
Yeah, I think, we've got, so when they're ordering online, and there's a gray space with online, it could be an email, is text online, right? So there's kind of a gray space with online, but it is happening and it is sticking amongst the pro. And then we've got an even split typically between picking up in store versus delivery. I think you have to be providing options to the pro customer. We do see, when we look at the data in greater detail, that the larger the contractor, the more likely they are to be ordering product online. So again, who are you trying to target? Who is your audience? If it's a smaller kind of existing residential, maybe remodeler, maybe in-store is just fine. But if you're talking more commercial oriented, larger GC, they may want some online capabilities for placing orders and tracking. We are seeing this stick, and you can see here on this chart, you've got physical purchase versus online and all other. And as we go to a more specialty oriented supplier, more towards LBM, there's actually more online purchase behavior happening than there is at retail at Depot and Lowe's. I think this is going to be a critical thing going forward. This is where you've seen Lowe's and Depot investing billions into their online logistics and infrastructure. You've seen a lot of acquisition on the dealer side of the world with the likes of BFS, Beacon, et cetera, really consolidating a number of outlets. We believe ultimately to pool those resources together so they can start delivering and investing in digital and technology that requires a high dollar of investment to be able to meet the customer needs. Okay. Unless there's any other questions, Jennifer, I'm going to jump into similar things with DIYers, and then we'll wrap all this up as to what the heck it means.
Love it. Thank you.
Cool. So I know some contractors on the line, some builders and maybe some developers as well. So let's think about what the homeowners, what your audience is thinking, what they're doing. First and foremost, this is something that I find pretty interesting. We ask them on a monthly basis. This is, gosh, I think we're surveying about 1,000 homeowners on a monthly basis. Hey, do you feel this is a good or bad time to do a home remodel or improvement project? And we see the slow burn of homeowners saying like, yeah, it's not a great time. We've got a little over 30% saying that they believe this is a bad time to do a home improvement project. So the attitude, the sentiment is, I know it's not great right now. What about hiring a pro? You want to hire a contractor? Is this a good time to do that? Even more saying that this is a bad time to hire a pro. And when we follow up with why, or why they didn't hire a pro, they cost too much. They're not available. They're not responsive. But cost is a big factor of why they aren't hiring a pro and maybe doing some work themselves. Again, here comes this pricing discussion, y'all, that we haven't really had to worry about too much for the last couple of years. For those that are postponing, which we see about 57% this past month postponing a project. Why did they do it? Here again, we see the number one reason, budget. Number two, material prices. This is all around price. This is all around budget. So this is really starting to come from the homeowner side and have an impact on project delays and project spend. Touched on this already, but why they didn't hire a pro, too expensive. I can do it myself, okay? Challenges they had finding a pro, they're just too busy. They're getting expensive, okay? So some classic things that we look at. I'm going to skip over that slide and we're going to touch on intent here in a little bit. But as we think about their challenges, similar things to what we saw with the pros in that homeowners are also experiencing availability issues. And when they have availability issues, very similar to the pro as well, they find a solution, either a different supplier, different product, maybe a different brand. So as a supplier, as a contractor, you need to have solutions for your homeowner because they don't want to wait around. They want to get these projects done. I made a comment earlier that we see about 80% plus saying that they intend or want to do a project in the coming months. So help them find solutions, knowing that they've got these budget concerns, these budget challenges that we just reviewed a couple slides back. They are seeing costs go up as well. So they see these prices going up. They're aware of some of the challenges that the contractors have with pricing, with availability. So you can share almost in those miseries. Don't shy away from it. Don't pretend that this isn't happening because the homeowners likely had experience with it as well, not just in building products, but certainly in all aspects of life. Okay. Let's look at how they're researching and getting information. Similar to the pros, but more research happening online. So now we see online is super critical if we've got a homeowner or consumer audience, right? How are we blending those two worlds together? And it follows the same kind of pattern. The further, to the right and up, more research is being done overall. Those are likely higher price point, more durable categories than what's the bottom left. Hardware at the bottom left being fasteners, glues, etc. Okay. And why are they going online? Boomers, a little bit more price sensitive, price shopping, but everybody is looking at price and product reviews is big for consumers. And then product information availability as well. But again, this price thing is starting to jump to the top, y'all. I'm going to jump through some of their social media use as we look at those using social media for home improvement product purchases. And this is of those that have the social platform. So if you personally have YouTube, what percent of those that personally have YouTube are using it for home improvement building product research? And we see it's right around 42, 43% kind of year over year. YouTube is a great instructional resource for DIYers. This is how they're learning not only about products, but how to use and install the product as well. Okay, so social still a very viable means as we think about homeowner outreach. As far as brand shift, it's happening here as well. So we look at those that have purchased a new brand of product in the past year, and we continue to see shift, not as much as we see with the pro, but that's because homeowners don't have a standard brand. Sometimes it's the first time they're purchasing a category, so therefore that's not brand shift. That's just purchasing brand for the first time. So less shift with the DIYers, but it is still happening. And when it does, it's about quality, it's about availability, and then here comes this price discussion. It was on sale, it was cheaper. Okay, so availability is still an issue, still driving some change. But as we've looked at and connecting these breadcrumbs together, we're starting to see price, budget, those things are starting to creep up. At the same time when maybe demand is softening and therefore availability is getting a little bit better. Okay, so again, price may be the new availability for 2023. And just like pros, homeowners are satisfied with the new brands they're trying. So if you think your brand, if you think your product, if you think you're immune to any sort of challengers coming into the space, we would push back and say, think again. Okay, and this one really saying the same thing. So where are consumers going? We know they're going to big box. They live and breathe big box, particularly the older the generation, the more they're going in store at big box. But we also see some play with Amazon as well as specialty supply. Again, this is all about increasing your kind of penetration, if you will, on how to reach the consumer. Both pros and consumers these days more than ever are going to find a way. They're going to find what they want, when they want, where they want it, and how they want it. So what are you doing as a supplier, as a manufacturer, as a contractor to help them in that process? Purchase method with DIYers and with homeowners, still a great deal of in-store. It depends significantly on the generation. As you would expect, the younger the generation, much more online. Okay, but personally was kind of surprised to see that consumers aren't buying building products online to the degree that pros are. Okay. Last but not least, so what? Thanks, Farnsworth. You just zoomed through like 80 slides, skipped over half of them, and didn't stop talking for 40 minutes. So what the heck do we do with all this? First of all, here are the 6 things to be thinking about. Demand is sidelined by finances and psychology. We talked about that earlier, right? We've got some true fundamentals and stats that show that the financial implications are removing some would-be home buyers from the marketplace, but there's that psychological piece as well, where we've declined in consumer confidence by about 38%, over the past year. So both are playing a role. Number 2, desire, intent, that remains strong. Homeowners want to do these projects on their house, particularly if they are staying in their home. They've got low rates on their home. There's no availability to go find a new home to move to. So they're staying put and they want to do work on that home to accommodate for their new lifestyle, to update the kitchen that they've been sitting with for a few years. Desire remains strong. Number 2, supply remains very low, and this is going to keep equity very high. There are challenges with building and ramping up new builds. We're going to be declining in new starts next year compared to this year. So that supply is going to remain low. We were way underbuilt coming into the pandemic. We're going to be probably worse coming out of it. And this is going to bode well, again, for people staying in their home and keeping equities pretty high. Number 4, price. I think I've beat this horse enough today. Think about pricing strategy. Availability is still an issue. That's number 5. Labor is still an issue. That's number 6. But pricing is becoming more important for both pros and homeowners as we think about the challenges they're facing with increased material prices, maybe some loss in some assets, okay, higher rates to borrow the money. So we haven't had to think about budget for too long, because whatever was on the shelf, people were going to buy it. That's not the case. We need to think about merchandising. We need to think about options that we're providing to the homeowner to be able to get the project done. Doesn't always have to be the cheapest, but be mindful of this. 5, availability. That remains, but it's getting better, faster in some categories than others. But we expect availability to continue to improve, maybe subtly and slowly, but improve nonetheless. We've got productions increasing while demand is coming down. Okay. And labor issues, these are going to remain. We've been on many panels and been in many conferences where we discussed labor. I love some of the things and initiatives some of the nonprofits as well as some of the for-profits are doing and trying to educate and train and get folks into our industry. However, it wasn't a few months ago that we've got more job openings in the construction space than we've ever had since it's been recorded. This isn't a matter of 1,000 people. It's a matter of 50, 100, 200,000 people needing to come into this space. This is a massive warm body issue. It is not going to be resolved anytime soon and may never be. So the solutions are really going to have to come from innovation, with the installation times, installation ease, reduce callbacks, et cetera. Otherwise, there's got to be just a huge pool of new would-be workers that we've got to go find. So what are the implications to you? What does this all mean? First off, the existing home market has more upside than we see with the new home market. We looked again at the supply. Existing home supply is extremely low. Existing home value is extremely high. This is where we see some upside. Contractors represent a better opportunity than consumers or DIYers. A lot of the DIY work has been done. They now want to do projects that they're incapable of or don't want to mess with. So that existing home contractor market may have more upside than any other piece going forward for the next year, possibly 2 years. And growth will be targeted. What we mean by that is think about the projects and products as well as consumer audiences, customer audiences, where you might find more success. Look at your specific market, look at your specific brand, dig deep into your customer audiences to understand who they are. Where is the work being done? What are the opportunities? We've got the Inflation Reduction Act coming online, which is going to introduce some opportunities and incentives for a lot of different project types, solar, HVAC, et cetera. So you might need to get pretty nuanced with where those growth opportunities are. It's not just going to be all ships rising the way that it has been the past couple of years. You may need to be pretty selective in how and where you find those growth opportunities. And last, and certainly not least, you need to compete like you used to. Think about what things were in 2016, 17, 18, 19. Remember those days when you had to fight for share and fight to maintain share. That's the world we're entering here, where we've got to compete in a market that doesn't see but maybe 3%, 4% growth overall. You've got to go out and get it. It's not just going to come to you simply by showing up. So think about your strategic planning, get back into it, whether it's pricing, whether it's customer, whether it's brand strategy. You really need to get back into some strategic planning, not just reactionary decisions, the way that many of us have been handling business for the past few years. I hope this is helpful. Here's a little bit about what we do. I'm not going to drone on with this, but truly reach out to myself, any of my colleagues, if you've got questions, not only on this, the industry as a whole, getting deeper dives into your customer, your brand, your product. We love this space. We're grateful to be able to share our thoughts with you today. So thank you.
Wow, what a treat. Grant, thank you so much. This is fantastic. And yes, like you said, you did go through a ton of information, and I'm glad you have that the contact up right now. We will be sending a follow-up to everybody who registered with a recording to the session, along with your contact information, so anybody can reach out, and hopefully we can put some more information in there about the Home Improvement Research Institute. And everyone on this call should be a member and pass it along, because it's a great group that really provides some amazing insights for our industry. So, and I also liked your focus on innovation. So we have to be looking at the labor discussion a little bit differently, because it's been around for decades. So
Yep.
We really have to crush it now. Thank you so much for your time, Grant. Always a pleasure. And thank you everybody for attending.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.